All right, welcome everybody out to Money Mastery Mastermind. I am so excited to share with you how to actually mastermind like a millionaire. There are different techniques, and I've found that truly it all boils down to who you really are and how you show up. And so we're going to talk about a few things first. First off, what does a 2x4, a geese, a half-naked man, and charcoal briquettes have to do with business? They all work based off teamwork. If you take a 2x4, it will break at 437 pounds of pressure. But if you take two 2x4s and nail them together, it'll break at 1,877 pounds of pressure. They are stronger together than they are apart. If you take geese, for example, they will fly in a V formation, the ones at the back end always honking to the one at the front to encourage them to keep going, and they'll have a 77% greater flying ratio just because they are flying as a team. Another interesting thing about geese is when one of them gets ill and falls to the ground, two of them will go down with it, stay with it till either it dies or gets better, and if it dies, they'll just join another flock of geese honking from the back to encourage to move forward. So what does a half-naked man have to do with it? Everything. It was Gandhi. Gandhi changed the British government when he was living in India solely by gathering the people together, forming a mastermind, and changing their laws. They were able to overcome so much because they were stronger together than they were apart. You take a charcoal briquette. A charcoal briquette, if you take one out of a group of them, that one will go cold in 5 or 10 minutes. But if they stay together, they'll stay warm for an hour to 2 hours and be able to cook you dinner. So all these things have to do with the same thing, which is teamwork. And a mastermind is nothing more than a teamwork. To be truly transparent, to truly be without ego, and to be very successful. You have to have a mastermind to move forward in your business. You look at the top selling car of all time. That was the Model T. The Model T sold over 16 million copies. And yes, you can say there are a few more cars that have sold more. The Camry has sold more. The F-150 series has, and the Beetle has. However, when you look at the per capita amount of people back in 1924, nothing compares to the Model T. And the Model T was successfully built by Henry Ford because he was in a mastermind which was called the Vagabonds. The Vagabonds consisted of Harvey Firestone, the Firestone Rubber Company, Thomas Edison, electric light bulb, Henry Ford, and a few other men. And they would get together every single year, and they would travel the countryside, learning how to, as Edison would say, experiment in science in environmental laboratories, learning about technology. They would share concepts and they'd share ideas. You look at the top-selling music company of all time, it's Sony ATV. They have 2 million songs, and they produce $2 billion in annual revenue. That was formed by a mastermind with Michael Jackson, which I'll share in a little bit. You look at the top-selling artist of all time, Paul Cézanne. He was part of a mastermind group with Monet. In 2011, a world record for the card players was sold for $269 million. Now, he's been dead for a long time, but the reality is his art was the #1 most expensive art of all time until February of 2015. A new one just broke the record. But because of this mastermind he was in with Monet, he was able to use all of his skill sets to be able to make a bigger difference, to paint in a way that would really transform his world and eventually the world around him. And you look at the best-selling book of all time, the Bible, you look at Jesus Christ and the 12 Apostles, that's a mastermind. And they've sold over 1 billion copies of the Bible. Not to sound sacrilegious, but it is amazing how Christianity has spread across the world, and it all started with a mastermind of 12 people and the Savior. The #1 reason why masterminds fail is ego. That is the absolute #1 reason. So when we get in this mastermind and we set a foundation, you have to check your ego at the door. You have to be willing to be transparent. You have to be willing to be open. You got to be willing to be honest. You got to be willing to let people see your scars. And it's not about positioning. So when you get in a mastermind, it's not like you're trying to position yourself to be a better professional and you want people to give you accolades. No, a mastermind is being able to have a best friend you can tell your deepest, darkest secrets to, because that friend is going to hold it for you and it's going to reserve it for you and help you overcome your challenges. I have a dear friend of mine who he and I have been in mastermind for about 2 years, but our relationship did not change until I was being transparent with him. I told him about how I've lost a car and a house, and he shared with in tears in his eyes about how he had to file bankruptcy at one time. That transparency instantly made me like him more, and there was no more ego. We were able to do real business with one another. So over the next 90 days, I want you to visualize and really think about how anything and everything is possible. Let's shatter every goal you've ever had, and let's teach you how to network like a millionaire. So the first way to do it is I'm going to teach you what are called the 6 profit channels. And if you can see my screen, the 6 profit channels are based off of people, resources, opportunity, funding, information, and technology. These 6 resources are really what makes up profit. And so we're going to connect you in this mastermind to these 6 resources to be able to connect to people, resources, opportunity, funding, and information technology. But I want to give you a story in each one of these categories so you can understand more in depth of what they really are. So you look at people and look at Mark Zuckerberg, who's the founder of Facebook. He was looking at some new technology by Jan Koum, who's the owner of WhatsApp. And he tried to get his attention, tried to take him to lunch, and Jan just blew him off. And eventually Jan's business partner said, hey, this is Mark Zuckerberg. You might really want to take a lunch with him. You might really want to learn about him because he is one of the richest, youngest men in the world. So over a 2-year period, they built a fond relationship. They'd play cards together. They'd enjoy a fine glass of wine. They would travel. And at one point, Jan told Mark that Larry Page, the CEO of Google, wanted to talk to him. At which point, Mark said, you know what? Go ahead and you talk to him, but before you commit anything, come back. I want to make an offer on WhatsApp, his company. So Jan went, heard what Larry Page had to say, but he had a 2-year head start, Mark did, over Larry Page. And when Jan came back to Mark Zuckerberg, Mark bought his company for $19 billion, making Jan Koum an instant billionaire, simply because they had a 2-year relationship. So in your business, there are times where you need to connect to people. You need to find new people to get into the business as well as to connect you to other people. R is for resources. What does a lunch bag have to do with $20 million? Well, Paula Deen was divorced and left with $200 and 2 teenage boys. Having no money, no expertise or skill set, she decided she was going to form the Bag Lady, where she would make sandwiches every single day and then send her kids out to sell them on the streets. And so they did this for years after years. And then they networked with other people. They created a mastermind. They opened up their first restaurant, their second restaurant, their third restaurant. And all of it started with having only $200 and a mastermind. But she connected to her resources. She knew she had the ability to benefit from her expertise as cooking. That's all she could do. She had no college education. She was left after divorce with $200, but she was very resourceful. And then O is for opportunities. Kathy Ireland is the richest supermodel in the world. Her net worth is higher than Christy Brinkley, Heidi Klum, Kate Moss, Naomi Campbell, Elle Macpherson, and Claudia Schiffer combined. How did she do it when she was just an average supermodel? She did it through another mastermind. The guy who owned Gold Toe Socks came to her and said, we want you to license our Gold Toe Socks, and we want to put you on the picture of the on the sock. And she thought, you know what? I don't really see how I can sell Gold Toe Socks, but what I could sell is Kathy Ireland socks. And so he thought, that's a great idea. Let's do it. So they combined their efforts and they created Kathy Ireland socks. And then it was swimwear and towels. But she wasn't really changing anything until she joined a mastermind group where they finally said, you know, Kathy, it's great that you're selling clothing. You're a supermodel. That's great. But why don't you sell dressers? Why don't you sell carpets? Why don't you sell other things that people buy but hold on for a lot longer and spend a lot more for? So it takes the same amount of decision making to buy a dress as it does a dresser, but there's more profitability in dressers. So she created Kathy Ireland Worldwide. She licenses her name to carpets, to windows. She does $400 million in Kathy Ireland windows. That's crazy. She's a supermodel. Why would you buy Kathy Ireland windows? But she does. And so her company, through her licensing, generates over $2 billion a year. She's twice the size of Martha Stewart in revenue. F is for funding. Did you know that Steve Jobs did not become a billionaire until after he was fired from Apple? After Jobs was fired from Apple, he created Next Computer. He didn't have the necessary money, so he masterminded, he networked with people, and he ended up raising $150 million. From that network, he also met George Lucas, who owned Pixar. He then bought Pixar, and he became a billionaire when he took Pixar public. Eventually, Apple came back to him and said, you know what, we really need you to turn Apple around. Please come on board. please just turn around. We're hemorrhaging money. And so he had to go to Bill Gates, who was his arch nemesis, mastermind with Bill Gates. Bill Gates loaned him $150 million to build Apple up again. And actually, Bill Gates and Microsoft became a large shareholder in Apple stock. All that happened because of a mastermind. You would not have an Apple today if it was not for the mastermind that Steve Jobs and Bill Gates did together. The next is I for information. When Michael Jackson was just coming off the success of the Thriller album, he was with Paul McCartney and they were doing the song Say, 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 which went to #1. But over dinner one time, Paul McCartney brought out a black binder filled with just songs and songs and songs, and he told Michael that he owned those songs. He said, "What do you mean you own these songs? I see Buddy Holly's name here." He says, "I own the publishing rights to that song." So he was able to own the rights to the song, and at that point, Michael Jackson got new information, realizing, wait a minute, I could do more. I could own songs. So Michael Jackson went on a shopping spree for the next decade of his life and ended up buying the Beatles albums. He's basically the fifth Beatle. He was able to buy the intellectual property, the publishing rights to the Beatles. So even though Paul McCartney introduced it to him, he now owns the Beatles. Well, before he died, he merged with Sony, and they own 2 million songs, which generate $2 billion a year in revenue. That's all because he connected the new information in his mastermind. And last is technology. Technology is the one thing that is changing so rapidly day after day. When Jeff Bezos was a vice president on Wall Street, he had read an article that the internet was compounding at 2,300% a year. And he thought, you know what, I've got to be part of that. I have got to get in there and I've got to make a difference. I've got to be part of this business. So he left his cushion job and his golden parachute. He and his wife traveled across the country from New York to Seattle. He borrowed money from his parents, started in his parents' garage, and he built Amazon, which is one of the world's largest online retailers. So there are 6 profit channels. You've got people, resources, opportunities, funding, information, and technology. All of this comes together to create profit. But there's 3 levels of influence that we're going to talk about, and then we're going to get into the mastermind where I'm going to ask you to text me questions on your business, and I will give you information on what you can do to enhance your business. So if you can see my screen right now, for those of you who are driving, you may not, but there are 3 levels of influence. The first level is transactional influence. So transactional is 1-to-1, where if you're going to sell Renatus and you're selling one person to one person, that's transactional influence. The next influence is leveraged influence. So if I'm speaking in front of a room, like I've presented to you guys many times, I'm at the center of the room, but I have an influence of 50 or 100 or 300 people in the room. If you're doing a webinar, if you're publishing a book, you have a leveraged influence. But the highest level of influence is what's called perpetual influence. That's when you have full access to somebody else's 6 profit channels. So I'll take Bob Schneider, for example. Bob and I have become good friends over the last 9 years. He and I are part of our own mastermind group called Business NOS. NOS stands for Networking on Steroids. So we meet once a month and we do high octane activities and we mastermind. So I've gone to Bob many times and say, Bob, I need new resources. I need to tap into resources or information. Who do you know who can do X, Y, or Z? Or I'm looking for funding. Who do you know who can help me in funding? And he'll do the same thing. He'll say, Woody, I'm looking for people. I'm looking for people who can do classes. I have a good network of professionals, and they're willing to do classes for Bob. So Garrett Gunderson's going to do a class for Bob. I'm connecting him with a real estate guy who does commercial real estate. He'll connect with Bob. So if you really want to have a power of influence, you want to have a perpetual power of influence. But you're not going to have that with everyone. It really comes down to people you truly trust. And so if you look at the next worksheet I sent you called Connect to Profit, I'm going to pull it up on my screen. Hopefully you guys will be able to see it. This is what I call 3 to succeed. So in your email, you should receive this, and I'll send it again afterwards to make sure with this recording. But who are the 3 people that you can go to at 4 in the morning and say, hey, I'm stuck at the airport. Can you come pick me up? Those are your 3 to succeed. So you would put their names on those 3 lines. The other is 30 to thrive. Over the next 90 days, I want you to find 5 people for each of the profit channels. So I want you to find 5 people who are really good at connecting you to other people. 5 people who are really good with resources, opportunities, funding, information, and technology. So you'll put their names right here on those lines and their phone numbers. I actually did this exercise for myself, and what I found was I didn't have a lot of people for funding. I only had 1 or 2 people for funding. Technology, I only had 1 or 2 people. I had probably 30 people under people who can connect me to other people and opportunities and information, but I was kind of weak in the other areas. So for you to turn a profit, you've got to be able to connect to the 6 profit channels. So now what I want to do is I want to turn it open to an open call. I'm going to keep everyone muted because it's very loud. I want you to text my phone number. My phone number is 951-973-3408. That's 951-973-3408. And let me know what questions you have, and I'm going to answer them on this call, and we're going to mastermind together on how to solve this problem. So I'm going to put oh, great question. Can you have the same person in more than one line? Absolutely. Now, the more people you have that are different, the better it's going to be. So let's say I had Bob Schneider under connecting to people. I could also put Bob Schneider in information. He's an encyclopedia of information. But if I do that, then I'm only giving myself 4 other options. So by all means, you can put your name, someone's name in more than one category, but I think it's better to have 5 uniquely different ones. So great question. That's interesting. A lot of people ask the same question. Here's a great one from Mike. If you don't currently have enough people, how do you find more specific channels? This is fantastic. This is by referrals. So when I moved to Utah 3 years ago, I didn't know anybody. I maybe had 1 or 2 clients in Utah. So the first thing I did is I sat down with them. I said, who else do I need to know in Utah? And over the last 3 years, I built an enormous network of relationships with people because you have to create value. When you're masterminding, and this is where it really comes into play, you've got to leave your ego at the door, and you just have to find out what they need and help them solve their problems. There's that great quote by Roosevelt, people don't care what you know until they know how much you care, or people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So if you want to meet more people, if you want to truly increase your network, and I highly recommend it because we've all heard that adage that your net worth is equal to your net worth. I truly believe that to be true. So you need to create more value, create more relationships. If you guys know who Russell Brunson is, he's a guy up in Idaho. He's got a website called clickfunnels.com. He's launching this new business. He'll probably do $10 million this year in it. So my brother is partnered with him, and my brother lives in LA. And I got a phone call last night, and he said, hey, I'm up at LAX right now dropping off a surfboard to a guy. I said, what do you mean you're dropping off a surfboard? Because we were at a seminar, and we want this guy to promote our business. And he said, well, do you know anyone who lives in Southern California who could pick up a surfboard for me because I'm flying to Australia? He goes, it'll cost me $12,000 to ship it, but if someone can bring it to the airport, I can put it on the airplane for free. So my brother said, you know what? I live in Southern California. I'll pick it up for you. So my brother spent 4 hours of his day driving to Encinitas to pick up a surfboard, to go through traffic, to meet a guy at LAX. And here's the point. He wasn't being paid anything. He was creating value. This guy is one of the top producers in Australia. He could not believe my brother was willing to pick up his surfboard for him. But because he did, this guy said, you know what, Dave? I will happily promote when I get back to California, when I get back to Australia. That will probably put $60,000 in revenue in my brother's back pocket, simply because he spent 4 hours creating value for somebody else. So if you want to get more people in your life, ask for a referral. Who else do I need to know? And then create value for them. So we got some awesome questions here. Let me read these real quick and send them to you. So one of the questions, do we need 5 for each? Yes. Now, you don't need them today, but over the next 90 days, let's find people who know how to connect to people, resources, opportunity, funding, information, technology. That's your 30 to thrive. Do you not recommend personal relationships like family? Another great question. I mentioned my brother. He and I love each other. We talk 2, 3, 4 times a week, but we both have realized we cannot work together. We can refer business to one another. We can connect through each other's networks, but we just don't work well together. So I would just say there's nothing wrong with putting family members on your 30 to Thrive worksheet. Nothing wrong with that. But I I've just seen so many people get burned by family. I hate to say it, but they do. And they have a lot of expectations, and people get very external, and people get very egotistical in family if there's money involved. But yes, you can do it. I would recommend experimenting with it. What conversation would you have to include these people in your profit center? What I find is when I interview people, and honestly, my entire marketing budget is probably $26.34. And what I mean by that is I take people to a lot of lunches. I have eaten 3 and 4 lunches in a row where I'll have one appointment, then I'll buy another person a lunch and another person lunch. So what I find is when I take people to a lunch appointment and I ask them what they need, you don't have to tell them that you're putting them in your 30 to Thrive. You don't have to tell them about the profit channels, but find out what they're good at. Find out what their skill set is and ask them what you can do to build their business. And I swear I have found this to be so true. If you will help other people build their business first, they will always help you build yours. So I have a friend of mine named John Lee Dumas. He has the largest podcast online called Entrepreneurs on Fire. So entrepreneuronfire.com. He was rated the #1 podcast by Apple last year. He and I have built a relationship. I've never met him in person, but we've built a relationship over the last 2 years. And all I've done is try to create value for him first. I've sent him trophies and awards every time he's been successful. When he reached his first 1,000 listeners, 100,000 listeners, and in June of this year, he reached his 1,000th listener, where he has 1 million people a month now listening to his podcast. That's astounding. And he does it all out of his little apartment, which is hysterical in San Diego. If you go on his website, he keeps track of how much money he makes per month, and he shares it with people. So he makes $300,000 a month right now. So for 2 years, I've sent him books. I've sent him little trophies, little things to be successful. I've never met him one-on-one. And when I was launching Money Mastery, I went to him and said, hey, here's the deal. I want to pay you $50,000 a month to help me launch Money Mastery online. And what I mean by that is we're going to do a rev share where we're going to sell Money Mastery to an individual, where Bob pays a corporate license fee for Money Mastery and gives it to you guys for free. But there are many other companies I coach with and consult for that have thousands and thousands of individual reps who want to pay monthly on their own. So I went to John Dumas and said, hey, let's do a split. Let's do a rev share. And he loved the idea. So that connection after 2 years will generate for me $50,000 because we'll do a rev share. I'll pay him $50 and I'll keep $50 for myself. That should generate $600,000 a year in revenue just by spending 2 years building relationships with him. Got some great questions coming in. Give me a second to review these and I'll answer them for you. So you guys are in real estate. Here's a great question. If I call a title company, can I put the title company in the 30 to use a personal name in the title company? Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's a title company's name, a corporation's name. It's really somebody you can call for information. So when I was doing mortgages, I used to do all my loans with Countrywide because we had a great relationship with them. And I had an account rep there. And so I would definitely put under technology my account rep's name because I used that woman every single week with technology on their website. So yes, if you have go-to people that you're using quite frequently, by all means, put their name and number on there and refer to them all the time. Where should we go to meet people in order to generate referrals? Everything that I do, and if you know me, I don't have any social media posts. I don't do any of that. Everything I do is face-to-face. But I always ask for referrals. Every single time I ask for a referral. So you can easily go to, if let's say you were to move to a new city or new state, join a club, join a charity, donate your time, join a church. You'll start to find people. Then ask them for referrals. If someone says, you know what, I'm not interested in real estate, do you know anybody who loves real estate? Who do you know that is really into real estate? Everyone knows somebody. They'll then refer you, and then you start making phone calls. Take people to lunch. I spend a lot of money on lunches, and it has been my #1 marketing budget, and it works. Because after you have a one-on-one with someone, after you've sat down, created value for them, listened to them, helped them solve their problems, they will easily refer you to other people. Great questions, guys. Keep sending them in. If you're on the call, my cell number, area code 951-973-3408. That's 951-973-3408. If you are listening to this call after the fact, you're not on live right now, then don't text me, just email me, and I'll include the questions in next week. So you should have my email, S as in Sam, B as in boy, WWOODY@msn.com. So just email me your questions, and I'll answer them next week on this recorded call. Oh, good question. Can you explain the 3 to succeed again? What is the best way to determine these? So if you can see my screen up here on the top, the 3 to succeed, these are your go-to people that really, let's say they could be in more than one category of the 30 to thrive. These would be a great place for these people. So Bob Schneider was definitely one of my 3 to succeed because I can call him at any time, day or night, and he'll answer the phone and he'll help me solve people, resources, opportunity, funding, information, technology. He will open up his entire Rolodex. So if you go back to the 3 levels of influence that has the circles and the colors, the people I would put up on the 3 to succeed, these are your perpetual influence people. People who will open up your entire Rolodex. These might be business partners. These might be people within inside of Renatus. It is really somebody who is phenomenal at sharing. And likewise, you got to be the same for them. You got to be willing to share anything and everything with your 3 to succeed. Another good question. What are some qualifying questions you use to find out specific skill sets as it relates to the profit list? I really don't have qualifying questions. I have just curiosity. I'm a naturally curious person. If we sit down and we start talking, I'm going to talk to you for 2 or 3 hours without even taking a breath because I'm fascinated on who you are, what you do. So when you go to meet people, you cannot do the bait and switch. You can't ask them 3 questions about themselves and then go straight into, well, this is who I am and this is what I do. That's exactly what I'm talking about with ego-destroying masterminds. Be curious. Ask questions. Ask them their story. In fact, when I'm off this call, I'm going to send you another email with another handout. It talks about 15 questions you can ask anybody to create value for them. One of my favorite questions to ask people is, what are you most passionate about right now? Never ask anybody what they do for work. And here's the science behind that. When you ask someone what they do for work, a lot of people do not like their job. A lot of people are embarrassed about their job, especially if you're very successful. So they don't want to talk about their job. What happens is when you talk to them about their job that they don't like, those emotions are brought up. They then link those emotions to you. And all of a sudden, they see you and they remember not liking their job. So when you ask people, what are you most passionate about? Then they go off on their happiest, most feeling of importance, the day they felt the most important, and they link that to you. So whenever they see you, they remember the passion that they had when they talked to you. But yes, I know when you're qualifying people, you do want to find out what they do, but do that like the 10th question. Talk to them about their passion, their family, what they love, their interests, their hobbies, and then that will eventually lead to work. Another great question. My attorney is not free. Is it okay to add him to my list, say in the information list? Yeah, you could do that. I wouldn't recommend it. The reason I wouldn't is because he isn't free and he's going to charge you money. The people in the information list are people you can go to get information anytime you want. So yes, if you're willing to pay for that information, so you call your attorney and say, hey, Mr. Attorney, do you know anybody do you have any other clients who are good in funding? Or do you have any other clients who can connect me to people? If he's going to charge you for that, it kind of defeats the purpose of a mastermind. You want to find people who are willing to give and share freely. Then you know that they have your best interest in mind. Oh, thank you very much for your transparency on this one. Once again, let's be as transparent as possible. I have plenty of friends that will pick me up at 3 a.m., but not good business partners or resources. I don't have any business relationships that would do that. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being transparent. We're all at different stages of our life. When I'm in a mastermind, and I'm always in a mastermind, for the last decade, I have been a part of multiple masterminds. Sometimes people are very successful in that mastermind, sometimes they aren't. But what you will benefit from a mastermind is those relationships and those connections. So if you have a lot of people, good friends, who will pick you up, but you don't have good business relationships, then all that says is you have not created value for other people. And I don't mean that in any way, shape, or form as a disrespect. What I mean is people do business with other people that they know, like, and trust. So if you are a value creator, and what I mean by value creator is these 6 profit channels: people, resources, opportunity, funding, information, and technology. If you can help other people solve these problems, people then value you. So I have a lot of friends who are multi-millionaires who are far, far more successful than I ever have been in my entire life. But I have gone to them and I've asked them, what do you need right now? What's the number one thing you need in your business right now? And they always know what they need. They always know what they want. And I put that in my mental Rolodex. And the next time I meet somebody else, if I can connect those 2 people, I do it every single day. So I spend probably 10 to 30 minutes a day sending texts, connecting people. So just yesterday, if you go to youtube.com and type in Business NOS, NOS, networking on steroids, so just Business NOS, there will come up a ton of different videos. One of the videos, the video that has an egg hitting my face, it's worth watching. And that video, on this networking group, we rent a mansion every quarter. So this mansion is 10,000 or 12,000 square feet, has an indoor racquetball room, it has indoor pool. And so the owner of that and I have become friends because I rent it 4 times a year. My cinematographer, who is Ryan Black, he also is Renatus. My cinematographer and her I connected just yesterday. Megan is the owner. Megan texted me and said, Woody, you have these great videos about our lodge. I would like to get some still samples, just the still shots, for our website. So I text Ryan and I made an introduction. I said, Ryan, meet Megan. Megan's looking for some stills for her website. Could you get those for her? And then I purposely text Ryan privately and I said, Ryan, here's an opportunity for you to connect with Megan. If you do a trade with her, you could probably create a promotional video for her, and she would probably give you the lodge for 3 days, which is a value of $5,000. You could then invite your other clients to the lodge and do a seminar at the lodge. So why would I take 10 or 15 or 20 minutes of my time to help him build his business or to help Megan? Because I know now, if I go to Ryan and say, Ryan, hey, could you do this video for me? Hey, could you help me? Could you connect me to somebody? Or I went to Megan and said, oh, Megan, I'm really swamped, but I really want to use your lodge. Will you help me? The answer is yes. So the way that you build relationships is no different than growing up on the playground. For some reason, when we're young, we have no fear in sharing toys with people. We have no fear in helping others. But when we get old, all of a sudden, we get really external. We get really afraid to open our mouths, and we don't share our toys with anyone. So if you will start sharing your toys, helping other people build their businesses, they will help you build yours. Let me look up some other questions real quick. Great, here's one. I have a best friend that has a great network, and how would you recommend I go about having her open her Rolodex of networking to me? I believe she knows much about me and feels some sort of way to share that. So how could I try to do that? Call her up and offer her something. Offer her what she needs. So let's just say her name is Susie. So this is how my dialogue with Susie would go. Susie, I know you have a phenomenal network, and I believe that you are an amazing individual who's helped a ton of people. What do you need right now in your business, and how can I help you get that? And she might say, you know what, I'm looking at building a new website. Even though you sell Renatus, you know people in the Renatus community who build websites. You call that person up and say, hey, here's Susie's phone number. She has a phenomenal network. It would benefit you greatly if you would call her to maybe create a website for her. Now you've got, it's kind of like an emotional, or let's call it a relationship bank. When you make deposits into other people's relationship banks, you can make withdrawals. But if you have no deposits, you have no withdrawals. So you cannot go to a bank. I don't bank at Wells Fargo, so I can't walk into Wells Fargo and say, hey, I need a withdrawal of $10,000. Well, no, because I don't bank there. But I can walk into my bank and do that because that's where my deposits are. So with relationships, same thing. Call them up and ask them, what do you need right now and how can I help you solve it? Another thing is, if you have information, here's a great thing. You can trade one of these channels for another channel. So let's say you have information. You know a lot about real estate. You've got videos. You can say, Susie, I'd be willing to come to your networking group or create a video for you and teach you guys some tricks about real estate, how to pay your mortgage off faster, how to buy and flip real estate. If that's something Susie wants, now you've made another deposit into her account. Love these questions, guys. You're doing fantastic. This is great masterminding. Okay, Loretta, thank you for your question. Seems like people are confusing building a real estate team with the list of 30 to thrive. Yes, you guys, I'm not talking about building a real estate team. I'm talking about building a network for life. Millionaires who network do not network based on their business. They network based on a perpetual influence, meaning they're going to own multiple companies over their lifetime, and they're going to always have a network of people who can solve their problems. Right now, you're doing Renatus, but eventually, you're going to do something else. Or eventually, you're going to make Renatus even larger. So we're talking about other people outside of Renatus who can really help you build your business. This is the #1 mistake networkers make, and I will say it time and time again. Networkers are at the lowest level of influence when they do transactional business. If you want to put people into your 6 profit channels that you're going to do business with on a transactional level, you're never going to go far. The people you want to put in here are your perpetual influence people, the people that you will open up your Rolodex to them. So using the Susie example, if I were to put Susie down for people because she has a great network, I would also expect Susie to call me anytime, day or night, to ask me a question about people, resources, opportunity, funding, information, or technology. So make sure when you're putting these people in, you don't actually have to do business with them. These are just people that you would network with. Ah, I love this. Once again, thanks for the transparency. You said to concentrate on asking other people questions. How do you handle when they ask you a question? Do you just try to steer the conversation back to them? Yes, I do actually. So a lot of times people will sit down, like the first time I'm having a meeting with another individual, and they will always say, well, Woody, tell me about you first. And I always never tell them about you first. Never, never, never. I'll always say, I'm happy to tell you about me, but first tell me what you're most passionate about. I'll always go back to them. Because until I can make them feel important, and this is why I give you guys access to Emotional Fingerprint, I want you to learn about how to make other people feel important. When you make people feel important, they'll do anything for you. And I don't mean that in a manipulating way. I mean that in a loving, caring way. You think of a sibling, a parent, someone you love, you would do anything for them. And that's what you want to do. You want to be able to love people that you meet. So if people ask me questions, well, now tell me about you, I'll tell them a little bit about me and I'll go back to them. So I was with Gary Price yesterday. We're at an attorney's office, and I could tell this attorney wanted to know why I was there. So I was helping strategize with Gary Price on the statute of responsibility, and this attorney obviously had heard a lot about me from Gary and Lisa, but he wanted to know who I was. So he went into the drill session. Well, who are you? Why are you here? How do you know Gary and Lisa? So I did some quick, simple answers, and then I'd ask him, so tell me, why are you passionate about the statute of responsibility? You're the attorney, but I know you've been part of this game for 7 years. Why are you so passionate? Instantly put it back onto him. All right, here's a long one. Let me read this real quick, and then I'll answer it for you. So this is a long one. I'm just going to paraphrase it. It's asking, I've traveled around. I've lived in 3 different states. I'm now back in Chicago. I've got relationships everywhere. How do I reapproach that communication? So I've actually moved 19 times in 20 years. So I've lived in a lot of areas. So I have my 30 to Thrive in California, and I have my 30 to Thrive in Utah. So if you're back into Chicago, what I would do is try to build your 30 to Thrive in Chicago. But you still have great networks in other states, Florida and New York, then what you want to do is still build relationships up there. So I have my 30 to Thrive, and I call it dripping. I drip on them at least once a month. So every one of them, I send a text once a month. Just, hey, how you doing? Anything you need help with? What are you working on right now? What do you need? And I always keep that warm market. You want to drip on them like feeding a plant, drip some water, make sure they know you love them, make sure you know you care about them. So if you've got relationships elsewhere, they still know people. They still have access to funding. You don't have to have them in your hometown. But I like, for the type of work that I do a lot of speaking, and I want to speak in Utah, so I like to build a network right where I am. But I also have a friend right now in California that we're going to work together. John Lee Dumas, he's in California. He's going to launch Money Mastery Online for me. So you can build them in both areas. I probably didn't answer that question very well because it was vague on both sides, but in essence, build wherever you are. Someone said, what was the YouTube channel you shared? And then this is, I'm sorry, the YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com, and then under the search, just type in Business NOS, N-O-S, Business NOS. There's probably 10 videos of my mastermind group that I have. This mastermind group, people pay $10,000 to be part of. We meet once a month. We go do high-octane activities. The video you want to see with the lodge is the one where you see me getting hit in the face with an egg. I'm not, and once again, I can't thank you enough for being transparent. Thank you for being transparent. I'm not always comfortable speaking to groups or putting on big seminars. How much of a hindrance is this building these profit channels and the 3 levels of influence? No, you don't have to put on big seminars. You don't have to be out there the way that I am. But every company has to access these 6 profit channels. So if you want to watch 6 videos on the what I talked about, go to connecttoprofit.com. Connecttoprofit.com. This is another company I own. If you go to connecttoprofit.com, there are 6 videos of the stories that I share with you about Mark Zuckerberg, about Paula Deen and Kathy Ireland. Watch those videos. Each industry uses all 6 profit channels. So if you're selling Renatus, you don't have to be on stage. You don't have to put yourself out where you're uncomfortable, but you still need to connect to people. You still need to know how to be resourceful. You still need to have opportunities. You got to find funding to buy real estate. You need information and you need technology. But you don't have to do it the way other people do it. Do it your way. Connect to the way you do it and you'll thrive. So Loretta wants to know more about the rev share. So rev shares, next week I'll teach you what's called maps. I'm going to make a note of that right now. I'm going to teach about maps. X marks the spot on a map. On a map, what you really need is you need people to help you dig up your treasure. So rev shares, let's say you were to go to a title company, or no, let's say an appraiser. Let's say you go to an appraiser. This might be a bad example, but let's just role play for a second. Let's say you go to an appraiser and you say, you know what, you're appraising people's home who are getting ready to buy and sell their home. If you will send me people to, that's a bad analogy. Give me a second, guys. Let me think of the right analogy I want here. Okay, let's say you owned a moving company. If you own a moving company and you went to an appraiser is appraising a home because someone is selling it. That appraiser and the moving company can do a rev share, meaning for every referral the appraiser sends to the moving company, he could give them a $100 gift card. So with Renatus, you could find people in the real estate community and you could do a rev share with them. Meaning if you'll send me someone who's interested in education, or an accountant would probably be better. I would go to an accountant. An accountant has access to people's financials. They know who's successful or not. And so I have a deep, deep relationship with my accountant. I've been with him for 15 years. If you were to call me up and say, Woody, I've got another client who is in this type of business, he wants to meet you, I would take that appointment in a heartbeat because I trust my accountant. So you can create rev shares with different people where if someone sends you business, you can give them a portion back. But I just made a note. Next week, I'll teach you more about how to do that because that's a fantastic skill set to learn how. So a lot of my businesses have rev shares. So if someone sends me somebody, I give a rev share back. Fantastic question. And once again, you guys can ask me any personal question you want, because I believe in being transparent and being in a mastermind like this. This is a lot different than if I were just coaching. In a mastermind, my Rolodex is your Rolodex. You need something, you're in my mastermind, we're going to share it. So someone asked me, explain how we may find out the relationships behind the relationships. Explain exactly how you connected with Bob Schneider and the many relationships prior to being able to connect him as one of your 3 to succeed. Fantastic question. So years and years and years ago, I was giving blood at my local church, and I was reading a book. And to this day, I can't remember if it was Kendall or Richard. And Kendall, I know you're on the call, so text me if it was you or if it was Richard. We started talking about this book. We had a common interest in money and business. Then we started working together, Richard and Kendall and I did, in California. They asked me to speak for Bob's previous company. I went to Bob's company. I spoke for his company. I then ended up giving his son, Caden, a Rubik's Cube. And so I love giving gifts. There's no strings attached. I just like to give gifts. Well, years go by, so I speak for probably only 3 or 4 times for Bob's previous company. So Bob knew of me. Then I didn't talk to Bob for 6 years. When I moved to Utah, Richard was living here. He was one of the first people I reached out to. Who do I need to know? How do I need to connect? Then Richard said, you know what, let's get you connected to Bob again. So we reached out to Bob, and honestly, at that moment, Bob did not want to meet me because I had not created any value for Bob recently. So Bob told Richard, you know what, have Woody start coaching your group. If he does well, then call me. So for 6 months, I donated time. I invested in the Richard's group. They also invested in me. We did a small mastermind group. They invested in me, so I didn't make a revenue. They started getting phenomenal results. Richard was doing fantastic, so Bob took notice and said, wait a minute, is Woody helping you? He said, yeah, let's have lunch together. So I sat down with Bob, we had lunch, and I showed him the card system, which is the relationship to riches card system, emotional fingerprint. He was really impressed. He said, well, let's have another lunch one-on-one. So we had another lunch one-on-one, and we sat down, and he said, you know, Woody, and you guys all heard the speech when he says that he has, he has worked with some of the best in the industry, but he doesn't trust any of them because they're not the same off stage as they are on stage. So that was one of his #1 concerns. So I knew I had to address that concern. So I said, Bob, I understand that you're afraid that if I come into your community, I'm going to burn some bridges, or I'm going to recruit, or I'm going to cross-pollinate or take people from your company. He goes, yeah, that's my #1 concern. I said, all right, then let's create a contract right here on the spot. And I literally, if you know me, I always have a journal with me. I pulled out my journal and I wrote down, here's the contract we're going to have. We're going to have a relationship contract. You tell me the top 3 things you never want me to do, and I'm going to tell you the 3 things I never want you to do. So he told me those 3 things. I told him the 3 things that would offend me. And I said, all right, here, sign this dotted line. So in my journal, we both signed it. Now, once again, this is like my second appointment with Bob. I said, if I ever do any of these 3 things, you have every right to get rid of me from your community and ban me. He's like, wow, all right, I like that. This is a good way to do business. This is fun. And so over a 6-month period of time, I would call him up, hey, let's go have lunch. Hey, let's go to the movies. And then he hired me as his coach, as a strategist. That built a better relationship. I got to meet his family and spend time with his family. And I had a chance to meet Caden, his son, who I gave a Rubik's Cube 9 years earlier, and he remembered that, and that was a bonding moment. So we planted seeds over a 9-year period. And then when I got connected, I spent 6 months with Richard. I spent 6 months with Bob. And now he's in my top 3. So just like growing up, and once again, this is where everyone makes this mistake in networking. We go to transactional. Well, if Bob doesn't do business with me, if Richard doesn't do business with me, then I'm not going to do business with them. I'm too worried about making money. I got to feed my family. That's the worst business you can be in, transactional. Be in a perpetual influence. So yes, I've made money along the way with Renatus. You guys have obviously paid to be in this mastermind, but I have given a ton of time, energy, and resources up front before I could even ask for the money. So that relationship now is in a perpetual state where I honestly foresee working with Renatus the rest of my life. But if it was transactional, I could have said, well, I'm not making any money. I'm going to go on to the next thing. Well, I would have missed all the relationships I have. I've grown to know and love all of you guys. being able to go to Cancun and Puerto Vallarta, traveling around the world, that makes my life very rich. I love spending time with you. That's because we connected on a very core level. Let me address some other questions real quick. There is so much information on emotional fingerprint. How should we tackle the information to get the most out of it? So go to nomortherapy.com and identify your emotional fingerprint. That's step one. Step two is you have the password and the login to access the back end. And I don't believe in hooking up to the fire hose and just drowning yourself. Don't do that. Just go on and take a little bit at a time. Watch one video a week. Over multiple weeks, you'll learn the information you need to know. There is a vast amount of information with emotional fingerprint. There really is. But the most important thing you need to know about emotional fingerprint, your 7 eyes, the 7 things that make you feel important, and how to validate them internally. If you only learn that, that would turn your business around because you no longer would be external, looking to other people, places, or things. You would truly look to yourself and be able to find your own solutions. What top 3 books have influenced you the most, and what would you recommend? I'm actually going to send out a survey to you guys for next week because I want you all to do it. I want us to have a book list. So this will be our Mastermind's book list. I'll tell you the 3 right off the top of my head that changed my life. One is As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. You can get that free online. That's As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. How to Win Friends and Influence People by Carnegie. That was a book that inspired the emotional fingerprint. It was the 2nd chapter, 1st page, quote by Dr. John Dewey that said, the deepest urge in human nature is the desire to feel important. And that really spent 10 years of my life, inspired me to spend 10 years of my life to really understand what drives people to feel important. And the 3rd one is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. Oh, thank you. Thank you for sending this text. Woody, I'm broke and I want to build my business. I don't easily trust people. Been burned several times. How do I build my list from that? Thank you for being transparent. We've all been broke at different times. I've been on food stamps. I have been to the point where I couldn't decide, should I pay the water bill or the light bill? We've all been there. But what you do have is what I call the 5 currencies. There are 5 currencies every human being has. You have mental currency, emotional currency, physical currency, spiritual currency, and financial currency. So when I was completely broke, I still had mental currency. I didn't lose any information that I had learned. And if you look up the definition of currency, it means to exchange. So it doesn't take money to make money. It takes an exchange of currency. So even if you're broke, you still have 4 other currencies. You have your mental currency, you have your physical currency, and your physical currency is your time and your energy. You have your emotional currency, and you still have your spiritual currency. So if you go on to the back end of No More Therapy, the membership site, there's actually videos on the 5 currencies and how do you use those currencies to exchange for making more money. I think if I remember correctly, it's under the tab Business Videos, but they are online on what you already have access to. Ooh, I love this question. Do you find yourself changing or adding new people to your 30 to thrive and 3 to succeed? Yes. When I find another player, someone who I've built a deeper relationship with, I will put them in that list. There's nothing wrong. You're not kicking anybody out, but you're just going to add to that list of someone you can really, really go to. The website for Emotional Fingerprint is nomortherapy.com. When you go to the upper right-hand corner, it says your name and your email. Above that, there's the member login. So if you've never discovered your emotional fingerprint, go to nomortherapy.com, put in your name and your email. That will take you 20 minutes. It'll walk you through your emotional fingerprint. When you're done, go back to nomortherapy.com. Upper right-hand corner, it'll say member login. Click on that, and it'll ask you for your username and guest. Now, I'm going to share this with you right now. Do not share this with anyone else. This is only for our mastermind. And do not change the username and the password, because I've had 4 people already do that, and it messes everybody else up. So after you click on member login, it takes you to a new page. Your username is info, I-N-F-O, at nomortherapy.com. The password is guest. So your username is info at nomortherapy.com, and the password is guest. That will take you to the back-end site, and I charge $600 a year for this, so I'm giving you this as a gift. There you can discover your emotional, look at your emotional fingerprint. You can also look at the videos on the 5 currencies. When you're new to an organization, how do you handle it when you're profitless? People want to wait until you're successful before they consider joining you in business. Once again, these people that you're putting on your profit list, you're not going to do transactions with. You're not going to ask them to be part of Renatus. You're going to ask them for people, resources, opportunity, technology, information, and funding. So I have a friend of mine who I always go to build my websites, but I've never asked him to coach with me. I've never asked him to join my mastermind. There are tons of people I go to for information, but I'm not going to ask them to join Emotional Fingerprint. So this 30 to Thrive, if they join Renatus, that's just a bonus. But you need to have people in your network you can turn to build your business. They don't care if you're successful. All they care is that you created value for them first. People never ask me, well, Woody, how many products have you sold? Woody, what's your education? Woody, how much have you done? I'm a high school dropout. I'm a complete failure. I've lost more money and made more money than most people do in a lifetime. But what I do, and I do very, very well, is when I meet somebody, I create massive value for them. I answer their problems, I find solutions for them, and that helps them get to where they want to be. And that's the same thing you do with zero money. All right, let's not, if you would be so kind, let's not put in any more questions. I'm going to answer the last 5 that I have. We'll end here. It'll be an hour. And then we will go till next week. And so start listing the questions you want to ask, and then I will answer them all next week. Will you always have access to the back end of No More Therapy? Yes, I will. Since you're part of my mastermind, I will give you forever access. Thank you for, someone said, that was me who changed the username and password. Sorry. Thank you for letting me know. Can you give examples of the type of people you would put in each category? I put people in those categories, people I want to have lunch with, people I would be willing to take a cruise with, people I'd be willing to travel with. I don't just put people in that list who might know a lot of people. I want to have relationships. To me, life's all about relationships. So on my 30 to Thrive, and I'll be honest, I don't have all 30 filled in yet. I'm still missing some areas. So I've got everything in people, I've got everything in information and opportunities and resources, but funding and technology, I don't have full yet. And I've been working on this for a year. So I just haven't found the right funding people yet, and I haven't found the right technology guys yet. But the other people are people I'd hang out with anytime and all the time. What is the assignment for next week? I will actually email you when we're done. I'll give you guys the assignment for next week. Oh, great question. So when we fill out the 5 people, do they have to be individuals that we would pick up their phone when they call anytime, like the 3 to Succeed? No. These 5 people in each of the 6 profit channels, they can be anybody. They don't have to be best friends. Your 3 to Succeed, those are kind of your best friends. Those are the people that you literally would cancel appointments for to go help. But the other 5 are business associates, people you want to spend time with, but not ones that you have to go to the airport at 3 in the morning to get. All right, last question. How can you rebound in your business once trust has been violated? In my coaching with Emotional Fingerprint, I come across this issue quite a bit, where people feel violated, people feel they can't trust anyone. I have this belief. We are good human beings. We have the light of Christ in us. We are good individuals, but there are times when people make bad decisions. I go forward and I trust everybody all the time, 100%. But the second they violate me, then I don't trust them anymore, but I move on to other people. You can still do business. You can find new people. You're not married to your business associates. You're not married to these 6 categories. Even marriage people, statistically speaking, 50% get divorced. So even that, if people hurt you, really spend some time with Emotional Fingerprint, but also realize you can replace them, move on, get new people, and you can thrive. So in closing, guys, thank you so much for being on the Mastermind call. I hope this was an enormous value for you. It was for me in answering your questions. I look forward to next week's call at the exact same time. Hopefully we'll get our technology working better, and I'll be able to actually see your chats. But thank you very much. We will talk very soon, and take care.